Hello and welcome to Pastor Talk. This is episode number 24. My name's Ethan, joined today by Pastor Keith Castleberry, as always, as well as Ashley Vargas. Welcome, Ashley. We're glad you're here.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yes. So they've had an interesting day today, or at least evening, getting here, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Can you tell us real quick what happened?
Yes, I can. So I hit a deer on the way here. I guess I've gotten really used to driving in Houston, and you don't have to check for those. Haven't been in College Station in a while. At night. So I was not actually looking out for the deer and saw it too late and hit it.
So you were driving?
Oh, yeah, I was driving. I'm glad it was me in my car and not me in my husband's car, because that would have been a disaster. So
Sure.
But yes, that happened.
Yes, so that was some exciting news we got just a few minutes before we started tonight, and so we're not too flustered, though. I think we're good.
Yeah,
We handled it.
So tonight we're going to open up with a question, and that question is this. What is your experience with foster care? Have you had an experience with foster care? Have you been a foster child at one point in your life? Have you fostered anyone? Have you known someone who fostered? So I want you to put that down in the comment section below. Let us know your experience, how much you know. Unload your brain a little bit in the comment section. Let us know everything that you know about foster care. And hopefully we will either confirm that or maybe counter that tonight. Who knows? Right. Because tonight we're going to be talking about foster care with Ashley Vargas here, who's our expert. You're going to tell us everything we have to know, right? By the time we leave tonight.
I'm going to try.
So, Ashley, while they're commenting below, keep doing it. Make sure you're typing. Why don't you introduce yourself? Let us know a little bit about your journey in foster care, and then your background included in that, your current work, and maybe end up with some of your passions. Doesn't have to be included with foster care. Just some of your hobbies, maybe.
Okay.
Let us know who you are.
So, like you said, my name is Ashley Vargas. I was in foster care for 6 years, about 6 years whenever I was little. From age 5, I was adopted at age 11. I was in 3 foster homes, which for most kids, that's not a lot of foster homes, honestly. But I was in 3 with my 2 younger sisters. I was adopted at 11. And then I decided at 9 that I wanted to be a case manager or a caseworker. I wanted to work with foster children. So I went and I got my undergrad. I got that in education. I went on to get my master's, which I got in social work, and later on applied for a job with Hope Rising, and I got it, and now I am a case manager for children in foster care. So that was kind of my journey there.
So you've been with Hope Rising now for how long?
2 years, about 2 years, a little over.
Awesome. What do they specialize in?
Yeah, so we provide foster homes for children who are like in general foster care, which is what we call, which is your traditional foster home. But we also verify homes to provide specialized care for victims of sex trafficking, which is a lot more difficult than it is to get a traditional foster home, just because it's scary being a foster parent just at all. It's even more so to provide services or to provide care for someone who has been a victim of something like sex trafficking.
And sex
but
trafficking
that's what we
is
do.
a big thing right now. I mean,
It is.
massive.
It is a very big issue in Houston.
And you live in Houston now.
Yes,
so that's
I
an
do.
update to everyone who's watching.
Right.
Yes, I live in Houston.
Let me update this. She got married 2 years ago? Or no, about a year and a half ago.
About 2 years ago in a few months.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and she's married about 2 years ago. And I want to know if she wants to. She's also expecting her first baby, so we're excited about that.
Yes.
And sorry, I don't know if I'm.
Oh
supposed to
no,
say that or
it's
not.
fine. I didn't
Okay,
know.
good.
Yeah, that's fine.
Anyway,
It would have got real
so
awkward.
that would have been very bad. We'd had to start over. But she came here as a student and excuse me, as her husband, her husband now was a student, and they moved off about a year and a half or so ago, 2 years ago, and we're very glad to have her back. But I just embarrassed myself. So anyway, I'm very thankful to have her back. But she is one of those top people, I believe, that in my perspective, is I look at her as a minister, because as we know, without the foster care system that as we know it today, I believe that our world would not be a welcome place for people, for children, young people, young adults that had no other place to go. And I think you and your team, of course, and there's more than just Hope Rising.
Oh,
but, I believe not paid enough, not recognized enough, and I really honor you for doing all the work you do already.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very thankful for you. So.
Right. So, real quick before we jump into this, because this could go really deep tonight, it may not. Who knows where this will go? But before you forget, make sure you're commenting below. Let us know your experience with foster care. Have you ever known someone in the foster care system? Have you been involved in it yourself? At the same time, many people are a little restricted. If you're in the foster care system, you're restricted on what you can say and who and what and all those things. But Ashley, why don't you let us know, do you have any hobbies, things like that we can break the ice with?
Any hobbies? I love to read. I like to crochet. You're talking about my personal hobbies,
wow.
right?
Yes.
Okay.
Crochet.
So, yes, yeah. I started doing that when I was about 8 or 9 years old.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I love crocheting. I like camping, hiking, being outside. I love coffee. That's my ideal date is
And
with
we didn't
Robert.
have any coffee for you. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's fine. I probably shouldn't be drinking it right now.
Right,
Anyway.
right. I drank one this morning, had 2 meetings with coffee, drank one this evening. So I'm like, man, I'm
He's wired.
Yeah,
I'm
I would.
wired.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing I don't have coffee right now. But yeah, I love coffee. I think that's about it. I just
Pretty
pretty
interesting
laid
life.
back.
And she has a husband.
Yes, I do have one of those.
And he may show up soon. He's probably still dealing with the deer, pulling it out of the grill. I don't know. But was it that bad or was it a little less?
I mean, I think it was pretty bad, but I've never hit a deer before. So, I mean, the fact that I hit one was awful. But like I said, I'm happy it was my car, not his. Cause,
Right.
Yeah.
Is it time for her to replace yours? Just move on?
Get a new car out of the deal. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about this. The purpose of foster care. This is
Yes.
something that so many people have misconceptions, which we're going to get into, but let's give us a working definition of foster care and what's its purpose. If you go
So
ahead and
the
start with that.
purpose of foster care is twofold, really. It's one, to provide a safe place for children, a place where they can grow, a place where they can experience love, a place where they can see what a family unit should look like. But it's also a place where a child can stay while the parents or the grandparents, aunt, uncle, whoever it may be, can work on themselves so that they can eventually get that child back. Because that's the idea, is reunification. We work towards that. We work
whole
as
goal
hard
is
as we
that,
can.
right.
Yeah, to make sure that we meet that permanency goal of reunification. That doesn't always happen. But initially, the goal is always going to be reunification.
Sure.
So it's kind of provide a safe place for children, but also provide just kind of a break for parents who are trying to work on themselves without not necessarily the distraction, but just the responsibility of having to care for a child and care for themselves. So that's kind of what.
I mean, I'm not sure if you even have an answer, but what is the percentage or the statistics for the percentage that actually return back to their families? Do you know?
So I don't have the actual percentage on that. I will say that back in the day, and this is way back, 'cause, foster care has been around for a while. It started with the orphan train and all that. We weren't doing a great job of getting kids back to a safe place. Now, maybe they were going home, but they weren't going back to a safe place. And so we've really been working on the system to ensure that children are being reunited with safe parents who know how to care for them and care for themselves. I will say that we have seen more children leave the foster care system and go back to family or be adopted or whatever than we have seen enter into the foster care system. So we are seeing progress. But as far as an actual number, I don't have that.
Yeah. I know as a pastor, I see, and of course, I think the church is supposed to be the most compassionate entity in the world. And I've seen students come here that have been foster children. And in fact, one that pretty much lingers in my mind a lot was in the foster home system. And he went through, and I can't remember, it was like 25 or 30, maybe 35. It was way up there, homes.
Yeah.
And he never was adopted. Ended up at 18, you kind of get cut off, and you either go to college, the military, or go your own way. And I think the guidance he received was good. Mm-hmm. He didn't receive it well, but and that's part of that problem. I say a problem, but that's part of that paradigm of being a foster child. Nobody wants me.
Right,
Nobody cares. But I think it's part of the church's intent anyway, and should be part of our ministry to reach those that don't think much of themselves because they have been rejected by a parent, or maybe not rejected, but wasn't well received anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's something. That's one of the reasons why we're talking about it tonight, is because the church really needs to be more proactive, more engaged in this than ever, and
Right.
especially with all the problems.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So y'all see, and I'm assuming, and I think I think anybody listening to us would assume, well, it's drugs, sex abuse, alcoholism. Is there any things that we don't naturally perceive the causes for people going into the foster system? Is there something out there that we're not perceiving? Is it just typically drugs, alcoholism, abuse of some sort? Is that what happens?
Not always. Sometimes it's just that the parents were not equipped to care for the child.
Okay.
So I know with myself, I was put into foster care because my birth mother was not able to care for us, and she just didn't have the right housing. She didn't have the correct transportation. She was with multiple men at a time. There wasn't really any abuse going on from her, and we had left my birth dad a long time ago at that point, so there wasn't any abuse going on from her. We just didn't have stable housing. We didn't have stable transportation. She didn't have a stable job, and people did multiple calls to CPS.
Yeah.
Our our daycare was right behind the CPS office, and so when she was late picking us up, well, that got reported. So it can be things like that they just don't have the ability. Or they weren't cared for correctly themselves, so they're doing what they know.
Yeah, it can be very generational.
Right,
Absolutely. I
right.
know that one of the situations I've seen I'll say this as a pastor, is people carry with them baggage, and then unfortunately they take it, either they give it to their children or take it out on their children, however you look at that.
Right.
And I think that is very sad.
Mm-hmm.
It's very sad because they could break that chain, break that cycle, but sometimes they're not given the tools.
Right.
So
Right.
anyway.
Well, we're getting pretty deep into it. Before we
Yeah.
get too deep, I want to talk a little bit about the misconceptions, because some people have ideas, and that's why we instigated that question to begin with, is what's your experience like, that kind of thing. Because some people are just clueless when it comes to the process of fostering, or maybe the impact of fostering. And we're going to get to the role of the church, and that's something ultimately we want to get to. We've got some scripture references we want to bring out, because I think this is an integral part of the church, is ministering and helping
Yes.
those in the foster system. So if you'll just let us know, what are some misconceptions, little known facts about the process, this fostering care?
Yeah. I think a huge misconception is the idea of I can never do it because I'd get too attached, or I'd love them too
Yes.
much, or whatever it may be. And I know that our foster parents address this a lot on social media and whatever, because they do get attached, and we want our foster parents and our kids to get attached, even though it's going to hurt when they leave. And now some people may hear that and think, well, that's awful. Why would you want your foster parents to go through that? Well, our kids need to know what a healthy attachment looks like between
Yes.
a child and parents. They need to know what that looks like, what it feels like. They need to have a healthy idea of what a family unit is. And so we want our foster parents to get attached. We want them to love these kids. We want these kids to get attached to them, and it's gonna be horrible when they have to go back and you see the child crying because they want to stay, and it's going to hurt. But we have to get ourselves as foster parents, and I'm not a foster parent, but I'm going to say we a lot.
Well, you've been through the
To-
system, so I think
Yeah.
you have a right to speak,
Yeah.
so don't worry.
We want to get ourselves to the point where this child's needs is more important than our own perceived
feelings.
risks
Yeah.
of getting into this. Because the kids need it. They need it desperately. They need to see, especially in church, they need to be in church.
Yes.
We need
Yes.
those Christian couples who are going to take these children to church. Now, they may not participate, but at least they can see what that looks like and see what a family unit looks
Sure.
like.
I love that.
So how many, and I'm deviating from really the question, but how many children right now I know you might not have an exact number, but about how many children are there in the foster care system in Texas?
In Texas, around 30,000.
Okay.
It's around there. That's not the exact number, but it's around 30,000
30,000
children.
children statewide in one way or another. They're in part of that foster system.
Yeah.
Incredible. 30,000 children.
Yes, and not enough homes.
Do you have a ratio of homes, children to homes? Is there a
No,
better
but
and
we
worse,
should.
or-
We should.
Yeah.
We should get that. That's a great question. I don't have the exact ratio, but I do know that we have children sleeping in the offices. I got a call just last week. The girl had been in the office since mid-September, sleeping in the office, and there aren't any homes that are able to accept her because she is a victim of sex trafficking, and she, had all these other, and they're just like
And
I
there's
said
certain
in the
training
beginning.
that they have to go through to be a home that's ready for that.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
If it
Yes.
was me and I was trying to make this thing better, and I know this isn't the topic, but I would have a ratio, a 3-to-1 or something like that, 3 children to 1 home, and I would market. We are 1,223 houses short, homes short,
Yeah.
and why don't you volunteer? And then next week go out there on the radio and say, guess what? We've had 123 people. We're only 1,000 short. Why don't you volunteer? I would make it somewhere because you want
Yeah.
society to buy into this vision of we are doing this together.
Right. Yes.
And I think when we place it as an individual burden, and we're just one little ant doing our little thing, we don't realize that all of us working together could really make a huge difference.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
anyway, sorry, got a little carried away. Sorry about that.
Right. And one misconception that I see or I've heard people say is so many people are only fostering for money.
Yes.
That's something that's kind of
Yeah.
weird to me. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So that's not. I mean, I'm not going to say that there is absolutely no foster parent in the world who is doing it for the money. That's not true. But I will say that we do check your budget whenever we verify you and you're going through the process. We'll go through that with you. We want to see how much money you bring in and how much money is left by the time you pay your bills, you do all of your outings and whatnot. And so let's say that you, Ethan, you want me to, you want to be verified for 2 children. Well, I'm going to look at your budget and I'm going to ask you if after you spend all this money, with the money you have left over, do you think you can care for 2 more children with that money? If the answer is no, well then let's look at how you can rearrange your budget, or let's look at how you can, maybe we just need to place 1 child in your home. Maybe you can't afford 2. Because what you get in foster or being a foster parent is you do get a monthly stipend. But that's like a reimbursement. So the idea of a reimbursement is that you had the money at the beginning in the first place to spend, and you are getting reimbursed
Now,
for caring for
this
that
is
child.
evaluated in the verification process at the beginning. Is there
Yes.
something, because so many people were in it for many years, is this evaluation happening every 2 years, 5 years? How's that work?
So I do it quarterly. I think we are only required to do it once a year. But I go through mine quarterly with my foster parents just because things can change. Now, your budget the amount of money you bring in isn't going to change quarterly, right?
Right.
At least it shouldn't.
Shouldn't.
It shouldn't be. But your budget may change. And, what you're doing with your kiddos may change. What you're buying for them, whatever it may be, that will change. And so if I have a home verified for 5 children, but their cost somewhere has gone up, well, we need to look at that. How can we save money? How can we bring that down? So yes, I review it quarterly.
Okay. So before we get into the role of the church in the foster care system, are there any facts that you want to bring out, set the stage before we get that far? Any things that people need to know about foster care that is usually not known?
I think. Do you have any specific questions?
Not necessarily.
It's just
And I may
so
ask
there's-
some, but
There are so many little facts, and I have my little list here. I think a huge one is the cost of adopting a child out of foster care, right? I've had this conversation with several people, and whenever I tell them that the cost is going to be around $1,500 to adopt a child out of foster care, they're blown away because they're expecting something much more.
because
expensive
private
than
agencies
that.
do charge much more. Or
Yes. Yeah, and it's not that at all. Adopting a child out of foster care is going to cost you around $1,500. It could be less, it could be more, but it's going to be around there because you are only paying for the attorney fee typically. And I mean, we want children to be adopted. We have so many children in the system. We need them to be adopted. We need them to find that
And the state actually has
permanency.
benefits for
And
those
yes,
to
yeah.
encourage
Yeah,
homing those
children who have been in foster care or who have been adopted from foster care in the state of Texas can receive a tuition waiver, so they don't have to pay for their college. They can also receive other benefits such as like their housing being paid for, or they will have someone go in and like help them find housing and maybe give them a few things in the house, like help them furnish it. There are other things. They can have their books paid for, and then yeah, there are a lot of benefits for adopting
And
a child.
is this a state funded?
This is the
Okay.
state of Texas. I'm only speaking
Yeah,
for the
and
And
state
each
of
state's
Texas.
going to be a little different, I'm sure.
Yes, yes. And the system in each state is a little different, the rules and regulations and whatever. So anything I say tonight is just Texas.
Sure,
I only know Texas.
But Texas is a huge part of
Yeah.
the system.
And I was
Yeah.
just thinking, we've got, I forgot how many exactly counties, 200, if I'm not mistaken, right at it, or maybe 100. No, that's North Carolina. I'm probably going to say 200. But if you just did the top 10 counties in the state, that's 3,000 children in each county
Yeah.
that is needing a home.
Yeah.
I'm still dwelling on that, and I hate to because I know we're talking about the cost and the benefits and all this kind of thing, but it's just hard to believe that we've got 3,000, and we're probably on the verge of that top. Well, we're probably the top 20 counties, but even then, 1,500 children in the top 20 counties.
Yeah.
If you just divide it out so simple. So the need is there, and what the state has done is try to motivate the families, the good families. You qualify them, and then try to motivate them into a place to where you take down all the barriers, or not all of them, but most of the barriers. I guess the biggest barrier would be the emotional.
For people to become foster
Yeah.
parents, I think so. I think there are a few other things such as like scheduling and something we go over in our trainings is your ecosystem or your eco map. So what does that look like prior to becoming a foster parent, and what is it going to look like when you are a foster parent? And sometimes when people see that, they realize that they don't have the time to be a foster parent. They need to look at their lives
see.
or come back later.
And
Because
there's
they
other
had too
ways of
much going
volunteering in
on.
some
Oh
way.
yeah, absolutely.
And that's something maybe we can talk about here in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not set up to be a foster parent specifically, you can volunteer in so many other ways.
Yes.
Remind me, and we'll get back to that.
Yeah, because I want to remember that too. I can't remember the terms, but we've talked about it.
Respite care.
Respite care.
Yes.
That's respite care. Yeah.
So
Yes.
I know some people are probably feeling a burden right now. They're saying, "Oh my goodness, there's a lot of children out there who need homes. They need a safe place to go." And you're starting to realize, well, maybe my home is set up for that. If you're not completely sold, we've got some scripture we want to pull out
Yeah.
for us in James chapter 1 verse 27. And many of you heard this, but for some reason we just ramble through it and we don't actually consider it. But it says this. It says, "Pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction." The fatherless and widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world. The word "visit" there means take care of, tend, to look upon with mercy, favor, regard. Those don't just, I know we say, to visit the fatherless. Okay, we made a visit, bye, we're moving on. Because our life's so important and so busy, of course.
The antonym is to disregard, to neglect, and reject.
Pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah, ignore it.
I live my life.
Incredible. And what's crazy is in Exodus, and let me get you the exact chapter, Exodus 22, the scripture, and this is early in God's relationship with humanity, with Israel anyway. He tells the people, first of all, you're not going to neglect or afflict a widow or a child or a fatherless child, and if you do, they're going to cry out, and I'm going to hear them, and I'm going to punish you for it.
Wow.
That's just like, He cares. God cares, and that's one of probably 15 or 20 scriptures here.
Right, because we could refer to Psalm 82. We see
Yes.
the psalmist wrote, "How long will you defend this unjust and show partiality to the wicked? Defend the weak and the fatherless. Uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed. Rescue the weak and needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked." He's recognizing there's an issue in our world.
Yeah.
And how long will you go until you address the issue? because so often we want to just live our lives just how we always have, no interruptions, nothing shaking it up. How long will you continue?
So in reality, it's not a human problem; it's a spiritual problem as well.
I would say so.
Yeah, because you've got all these children that need that human touch, that need to, to feel, like we said, feel that unity in the home, that peace in the home, that, attending church together and loving on one another, and they need that. That's just normal, mental development that they need. But then there's that spiritual development that we need as a society to care for them.
Right.
And this takes us back, talking about the spiritual aspect, to James chapter 1, verse 27, where the other side of this was, well, the first side was to look after the orphans and the widows
And
in their affliction, and to keep himself, so the subject, the person, unspotted from the world. So Scripture uses the word holiness, clean. So there's a combination of caring for the afflicted,
physical,
but also being pure yourself. Because that's
right.
the issue that some people run into, is they have a big heart, but they're not necessarily pure. And that's why so many kids can go from home to home and even experience abuse in some ways, or things like that.
That's hard. That's
it
hard
happens.
To think.
But if we can say, I can care, but I'm also going to be pure. I'm going to be holy. I'm going to do what God's will is for my life, and be an example for these children who are in our home. They need that loving experience.
And I'm only going to refer to the one most impacting person that I know that was part of the foster care system, and I'll just call his name Bob. That's probably the easiest way. But I remember him saying, and I don't know, again, I wished I remembered, but I think it was around 30 homes that he was in the foster care system, and not all of them were great.
Yeah.
In fact, from the stories he told me, and he memorized my number. This is what's crazy. Multiple times over the years, I've thought I need to just change my number because I got all these people calling me, and I really wish they'd go through the office. Sorry, people. But
that's the reality.
That's the reality, because I get calls 24/7,
Yeah.
But then about 3 years ago, I get a phone call from Bob, and he said, "Pastor Castleberry?" I said, "Yeah." And I knew immediately who it was. And I'm like, "Man, are you okay?" He goes, "Yeah, I memorized your number." So
and nowadays we don't memorize numbers.
Right.
We just don't.
But he is. I wished he was still here. But he's a little hard-headed. Now, it's not all my fault. But but I do wish that I could have helped him when he was younger. Now he's.
Well, I mean, you clearly did, because he memorized your phone number and called you several years later.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
like 10 years later.
Yeah. You
Crazy.
Clearly did something.
Yeah, well, anyway, it's not enough, though, and that's kind of the problem we're dealing with. And that's one of I think, the burdens that we have as a church, and I know that Ethan and his wife have talked about it multiple times. The adoption system and the foster system is just one of those things that is in such a low regard in society, yet it's one of the largest needs.
Mm-hmm. Right, absolutely.
Incredible. It's incredible.
Right.
So now you, how many children do you have to, and I'm just not wanting to get into details, but how many children do you, quote unquote, manage in your foster?
So my caseload now is about, I think, 9 children. I will be taking on a couple of more homes, so I think at that point I'll have I'll have up to 13 or 14.
So for someone that was willing or thinking about adopting, or fostering, what could they expect out of you? Let's just say you have 12, and would they see you once a month? Would you come walking through their house at any time of the day and hour? Would you make appointments? What could they expect from you?
So I am in the home once a month. I am also in the home for the foster parents specifically to go over like their budget, weapon inventory, pet inventory, and all those other things. Go over the minimum standards with them quarterly. That's done quarterly, and usually I'll make sure that falls on a day when I need to do my monthly visit with the children. So I'm in the home at least once a month. But I talk to my foster parents a lot, probably too much. I haven't gotten any complaints, so I feel like I'm doing a good job. But so I make sure to at least email them, text them, call them if I feel like they really need it, or if I'm driving, because sometimes I get text messages and I'm like, okay, well, I need to take care of this now, but I can't text. So we're going to have a phone call. But I'm communicating with them regularly. I don't want them to go 2 or 3 weeks without hearing from me and then feel completely alone, because being a foster parent is hard. It really is.
That was my other side
Yeah.
of that question.
It really
How
is.
much are you there to help them?
I try to be as much as possible. There's only so much I can do, and I really need my foster parents to communicate with me. And I tell them all the time, if you just want to, and I can speak for all the staff at Hope Rising when it comes to this, if you just need someone to vent to, please call staff at Hope Rising. I don't care if, whatever comes out of your mouth, if that's what needs to come out of your mouth right now so you can take care of yourself and then go take care of this child the way this child needs to be cared for, say it to me. There isn't anything you can say. There are very few things you can say. There are some. But that's going to make me come to your home and be like, okay, you're not equipped to care for this child. You're going to have a rough day. You're going to have meltdowns.
Right.
I've had foster parents call me and they're just crying because it's gotten to be too hard. And sometimes it's been building up, and I've known about it, but I didn't know how heavy the load was that they were carrying because that wasn't communicated to me. And I'm used to seeing all this stuff every day. So what I see versus what the foster parent is seeing looks very different, because I may say, oh, well, this is normal. And the foster parent is like, no, this is not. I can't handle this.
Yes.
So I need to know, like, is this load really heavy? How can I help you? And so that's why we try to communicate with our foster parents as much as possible, check in on them. If I go into your house and you look like you're about to have a mental breakdown, I'm going to ask you, like, how's your mental health, or how are you doing, or what's going on, or, you look exhausted. Like, let's talk about what's going on. And sometimes it's not even related to the kids. It's, I've had issues with my house all day long and I'm just done, so,
my house is a wreck.
yeah.
So that reminds me of another one. And I don't know how to say this. I look at children in a very compassionate light. I've got grandchildren now, which is amazing. But you classify, and I'm going to say that word, and I don't know if that's correct. You classify children according to their
level of care.
Yeah, what they need. Mm-hmm. Because there are children that just need a lot more care, and I don't know how you would say it in a more polite way, but they just need more attention, and the foster parents need to be really qualified to handle them.
Right.
What is that called?
So we have something called the level of care, which is basic,
level
moderate, specialized, and intense.
Okay.
Hope Rising does not place children who are intense into any of our homes. We do place basic, moderate, and specialized. And
so
what
four levels: basic, moderate, specialized,
and intense.
Okay.
And I think there's one above it. So when I was in foster care, they were numbers. Now they've changed them
That
a
does
few
sound
years
a little
ago.
bit more. You're a number 3.
Yeah,
Whoops.
you're a level. You're a level 2.
Off the chart.
Yeah.
Excuse me. You're special.
No, but it's based off of the level of care that they need.
Yeah.
So you were right. It is based off of like what kind of care they need. A basic child needs a basic level of care. Moderate child needs a moderate level of care. Specialized needs a specialized level of care. So your specialized kiddos look like kids who are primary medical needs, victims of sex trafficking. They need a lot of therapy, a lot of medical visits.
And what classification is that in?
Specialized.
Specialized.
Your basic kiddos will need just the basic care that a child needs. Now, I'm not saying that your basic level kids and your specialized kids are going to have like different number of case managers and caseworkers and whatnot. You're still going to have the full load of people visiting your home and calling you and texting you.
But that moderate, would that be somebody that's maybe just hyper or have some mental?
So they could be
development
diagnosed with like ADHD.
Okay.
Maybe they're having trouble focusing in school, so they need that 504 plan or whatever it may be. They need additional classes. Maybe instead of just individual therapy, they need occupational therapy and physical therapy.
Okay. So that's somebody that's willing to attend, not just be a temporary parent, but somebody to really attend to their needs specifically.
Right.
And you Hope Rising deals with those type of children.
Yes.
So the parents that are the possible foster parents that are listening to us tonight can, according to their ability, get involved on any one of those levels.
Yes.
Okay.
And they can choose. Now, if we have someone coming to us and they already have 5 children and they're like, well, I want to take on a teen who is specialized, a victim of sex trafficking, we're going to have a conversation about that. I'm not saying you
dangerous.
can't do it. I'm just saying we need to discuss what this is going to look like realistically in your home. Because that child they've been through a lot. And so they're going to have some behaviors. They need a lot of care. They're going to need medical visits, therapy. So, can you take time out of your day from your 5 children to care for this child who has greater needs? So,
Well, now, if we, and I'm assuming you said there's 5, maybe 6 levels of care. Is it? And I know it's. I'm pretty sure it's not anyway. 20%, 20%, 20% in each group. Does the possibility of having to, or not having to, but the possibility of being a foster child to that specialized care, is that maybe 10% of your children or foster kids, or is there any number?
I don't have a number.
Yeah.
You're asking great questions. I need to write
Sorry.
all these down
Sorry.
and get them. No, they're great. I will say, though, that all of our kids who enter into care new, a majority of them, and even some who are already in care, are going to be basic level.
Okay.
We don't, a majority of them. Even if they enter into care and they really should be moderate or specialized, they're going to enter into care as to basic, and then as basic, and then we, yeah.
After they get in. Okay, I see. That makes sense to me, because there are environments that I think that, and in fact I know, I've seen it happen, where I would consider a very hyperactive child in that environment is a special case. But if you put him in the right environment, it changes everything, and he is just as good as any other child. It was not matched up, the environment with his needs.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
That's I think that's a common. In fact, I think that's a common issue in a normal household.
Right. Yeah.
Because people get so, and part of that is they weren't raised properly. Their parents weren't educated in how to discipline children or how to manage schedules, and if they have a lot of children or whatever, and then they take that and again, without being taught how to take care of their children. Well, this is the way I was taught, and this is the way you're going to get it. And it's a whole different world today.
Yeah,
and especially
it
with we are more able to find these issues where, I'm going to say 30 years, probably when I was in school, 35, 40 years ago now, they were just ignored or paddled. One of the two. I mean, but now we're like, there's an issue here.
Right.
And we can work with that child, help them to overcome that issue, and really become a productive, and really as a big picture situation, the whole point is we want every child to be a productive part of society.
Right.
That's the big picture.
Right.
But we just need people to help us get them to that point.
Right. Yes.
Wow. Okay. Sorry.
This is really good. I love this discussion. And I want to tell everyone who's viewing right now, this is a great opportunity if you have questions. Before we get too far, we'd love for you to put your questions. We've got one in here. We've got a great comment in here I'd love to read here in a little while. But if you have any questions, you're hearing something that sparks your mind, and you're thinking, okay, maybe this is a great question to ask that maybe I won't get around to asking it, why don't you put it in the comment section, and we can bring that up towards the end, and Ashley, maybe you can answer it. Who knows? Yeah. So we'll see about that. So
no trick questions.
Yeah, questions, put them in the comment section. But we've heard stories of Bob or similar ones like that. Yeah. But we've also had some success stories, such as yourself. Coleman, you were 5 years old?
Around 5, yes. 5 years old.
You were adopted at 11, is that correct?
Yes, I was adopted at 11.
3 homes?
3 homes, yes. Yeah. So, yeah, I was in foster care for, like I said, about 6 years. I was adopted in my 3rd foster home. And, I mean, being in foster care really impacted my life. It kind of changed my perspective on just how I view people, how I viewed my life, what I wanted to be. I can't say that I would be the person I am now had I not been in foster care. And so I think it definitely, in that perspective, it definitely impacted me in a positive way. I think I learned a lot of what not to do. Especially for my job, like how to care for children. I don't remember ever seeing my case manager. And so that really, and it's possible that I mean, I remember her name, I remember what she looked like when I did see her. And so I think that really, now that I know how the system is supposed to work, that really bothers me because I see my kids once a month. I get pictures from my foster parents. I feel like I'm as involved as I can be as a case manager with my kiddos in my foster homes. And so that's always been something that stuck with me is I didn't want, and we were abused in all three homes. And so I want to make sure that my kids don't experience that. I don't want my kids to be
Say that one more time. Say that one more time. I want to make sure you were in 3 foster homes before you was finally adopted.
Yes.
And you were abused in all 3 homes.
In all 3, yes.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, and I know that a lot of it was that we did not make an outcry. We didn't tell our caseworkers or our case managers what was going on in the homes.
But you also didn't see
but
those caseworkers
I
as
didn't
much as
see
you
them
did.
very often.
In reality, that would be obviously it's not the child's fault. It would be the caseworker's fault.
Never, yeah.
Right. Yes. And I'm not, and like our therapist was in the home regularly. He was there all day, every Thursday. But again, if we didn't tell him, he didn't know. There were several investigations on a lot of our homes, but if kids don't say anything because they don't feel comfortable with those workers, then the investigation is going to get shut down and they're not going to look into it anymore. So that's my biggest thing is I want to make sure that my kids feel comfortable around me. They feel comfortable enough to tell me if there's something going on and that my foster parents know that, yes, I'm your case manager and I want to advocate for you, but if you hurt my kids, then we're going to have a conversation and these kids will not be in your home anymore. Which is something I wish had been done. I love how you use the word
conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering if there should be a better term for case manager. I mean, they're just when I hear case manager, I almost think a disconnect between you and the children. I mean, if I didn't know any better, I would say case manager.
Files.
It's just paperwork and taking care of, or what's your budget look like? What does your house look like? Where's the guns? Where's the dog? Okay, the children are well fed. Okay, see you later.
Need a word that surrounds mentor or something that's more active.
There's a term. I don't know it, but there's a term that y'all need to use.
Advocate.
Not just manager. Advocate would be case advocate. I'm sorry.
We do call ourselves like advocates for children and whatnot, but my official title is case manager, home developer.
Sorry
but
about that. That's incredible, though. I just find it fascinating that the case manager, that advocate, plays such an important role. It is.
All of the workers do, and they should.
Yeah.
Whether that job is done correctly or not.
You're one of the success stories, I believe.
As far as like being in foster care, I think so. As far as being a case manager, I really hope so. You'd have to talk to my foster parents.
Right.
They'll be able to tell you.
Well,
I try.
They keep sending you to us to do things. So, I mean, I think maybe they're
How old were you when you were able to speak about the abuse? Did it take you a long time as a child who went through the foster system?
I think when I made my official outcry, I was in college. I was 20 years old.
Wow.
I had made an outcry when I was 9, but it was kind of shut down, and they didn't want it to get out and for people to know, because again, back in the day, it does. And then something that was said to me was, if you go into another foster home, and they were right. If I went to another foster home, I would have been separated from my sisters, because I was getting older
and that held
in the
more
system.
Value than the abuse.
Right, and I didn't know my sisters were also being abused. I think had I known that, maybe I would have made a different decision. Maybe I would have told my caseworker, but I didn't know. I thought it was just me and another kiddo in the home. But I didn't know it was my biological sisters. I think had I known that, I would have risked maybe being separated from them, but not knowing that, I didn't want to face that risk of getting separated from my sisters.
When I think of the most successful foster person, because they're not a child anymore, I think of the movie where the football player.
Blindside?
Blindside, yeah.
Yes.
I don't know that was a foster child, but it was definitely in that same category.
Yeah.
But there's others that are well known. You named one.
Yes, my favorite one, Antoine Fisher. He wrote a book called Finding Fish, and they actually made a movie out of it. Now, it is a very difficult book to read because he was abused in his foster homes as well. I think He was in one home for maybe 11 years, but he was sexually abused in that foster home. But we went to an event and we actually got to hear him speak when I was about 10 or 11 years old. Antoine Fisher. Absolutely love the guy. But his story, and this is what I use for people who can't necessarily foster, but maybe they can provide respite care or babysitting.
Yeah, and we've had that question.
Yeah, so
what can other people do? Go ahead.
Well,
you tell us what he did. And we'll
but he had to go into respite care. I don't remember if it was like 3 days or 5 days or a week. It wasn't more than a week, I don't think. But he was in respite care with a great family. And this family was like just what a family should be, a loving family, a united family. They were great. And that changed his life forever. Just that 1 week,
He saw the
those
hope,
few days that he spent with that family. And it changed him.
We need you to define respite care, because when I first heard that, I'm like, respite care. Mm-hmm. What does it mean?
Respite care is basically babysitting for longer than 72 hours. So this child can stay the night with you, can be with you for longer than 72 hours. I think up to 14 days. There's so many rules and regulations or whatever with foster care that it's easy to forget which one is which. But I think it's up to 14 days. But that's the difference between babysitting and respite care. With babysitting, it can only be a few hours. Okay. And then there's like an age difference, but that's going to depend on which agency.
Respite care is for all children, whatever their age? I mean, they're needed for every age.
Yes.
And that actually brings up another topic. You provide foster care for infants?
Yes.
All the way up to 18?
And extended care. So what extended care is, when a child reaches 18, it's not, all right, you're 18, goodbye. Have a nice life. Hope you do well.
Has that changed recently? Has that been something that was in the past?
I think so. Yes, it's a recent change. I don't know how recent. But it is a recent change, because I think when I was in care, they started preparing you for aging out at like 16, because once you were 18, you're out.
Yeah, exactly. That's what Bob. That's what happened to him, and it was basically what you've already stated. College, military, or whatever, but 18, you're over.
Well, that preparation process from 16 to 18, what would that look like?
Now it's called the PALS program, which is Preparation for Adult Living. And that begins at 16. And I haven't actually gone to a PALS meeting with any of my kiddos. I've had kids who have done it, but they kind of want to go alone. They're 16 years old. But they don't need us there. But they go to these, and they have a PALS worker. So now that's another worker that foster parents have to communicate with. And it's exactly what it sounds like. They prepare them for adult living. They prepare them how to be independent, budgeting, time management. They have those conversations with them.
Hopefully the foster parent would assist in this.
Right,
up,
right.
It's not always guaranteed.
Well, we do have to check in on that. So
okay.
To make sure foster parents are doing that.
So to not leave or to refocus, if you will. My motive tonight is kind of peculiar. I could have probably not been here, but because I'm glad to be here. But we've got an audience that wants to know how they can help. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've got two types of people. We've got those that literally want to help physically by providing a home.
Right.
We want to know, what does that perfect family look like? Is there a picture of a perfect?
Is there a perfect family?
That's what I'm saying. Is there exactly?
Because everyone expects that.
Right. Oh, I couldn't do it because of this or because of that. Okay. Mm-hmm. So what we want to remove some of those excuses. Number one. Number two, I think we do want to address what can people that are beyond the age or beyond, they don't really think or maybe they say my schedule will not allow it. You know, we've got two people in the home. We both work swing shifts. That's obviously not going to work. What could they do? So if you could answer both those questions. If you don't, I can bring you back. But go ahead.
Okay, so I'll start with the second one, because that one's easier, and then we can go into the other one.
Okay.
So what can you do if you can't provide foster care for a child? You can become a respite provider. We need those. Our foster parents need those. They need a break. These kids are from hard places, so we need respite care providers. We need babysitters. If you can't provide respite care, you don't want to be on the list to provide respite care, you don't want to commit that many hours, become a babysitter. Be someone the foster parent can call on and be like, hey, can you pick this child up from school? Can you help me take them to a doctor's appointment? Can you stay at my house, or can I bring them to your house for a few hours? Then there's other things such as like going shopping for these kiddos, donating things to the foster families, donating things to Hope Rising for us to give to the foster families, providing meals for the foster parents, especially after they get a new placement. Do you want to be a contact to say, hey, like I can't do respite, babysitting, I can't help with any of that, but can you let me know anytime you get a new kid in a new foster home and I can prepare a meal for them, or I can give them a gift card, especially right now with COVID. Maybe you
Yes.
don't want to cook a meal in your home, but
Or the holidays coming up.
yeah,
just
holidays,
simple.
absolutely, yeah. I know churches are wanting to do angel trees this week. This week,
Yeah,
I got
not quite that quick.
emails. I've gotten emails today to take care of Christmas lists, so that's why it's on my mind.
So just to, and we do have other people from other churches watching. As a church, we could, just as a church, say, look, I'm making this stuff up, okay, as we go. As a church, we're going to raise some money for the foster children in our area.
Yeah,
And raise whatever amount, put it into gift cards or something, and it would be managed properly by you, and we wouldn't have to worry about it being, because unfortunately, I think every church has been burned by schemes and scams.
right.
But this is something that if we got involved with it, it would be a blessing to the state, a blessing to these children, and of course, a blessing to the church, which is, that's what we're here for.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. My church actually recently, the children's ministry and some of the ladies there actually just put together little Halloween goodie bags for the
Yeah.
kiddos, because with COVID right now, especially,
Yeah.
they're probably not going trick-or-treating. And I had one of my kiddos was talking about how excited he was, and we had to have a conversation about how, well, this year's different and there may not be that, and he was so upset. And so we were talking, and we came up with the idea to just create their goodie bags. And so they did that. And that was huge. The kids loved it. Oh my goodness. I passed those out, and our toddlers, our kiddos, I was getting texts from teens. They were so excited.
That's awesome.
And it was just little goodie bags, but that made their day.
Yeah.
So little things like that. But yes, donating gift cards and
Meals,
whatnot.
gift cards, anything like that.
And we
That's
give
great.
you updates.
You know,
we
and,
absolutely give
and
you
sadly,
updates.
and I'm talking from a pastor's perspective, but sadly, most of the time, and I won't say most of the time, a lot of the times, the church is all about salvation, living right, getting you ready, getting yourself ready to heaven, and we seldom think outside of our own needs and our own, spiritual needs, to where this is something that in reality, going back to the beginning of this conversation, God said, if you abuse the fatherless, I hear their cry.
Right.
That to me is like, we better not only not abuse them, but we better take care of them.
Right. Yeah.
And so this is something that I believe we should take personally as a church and as an individual. So anyway,
I think right now, while this is on our hearts,
Yeah.
is if you're at Victory Church, now's a great opportunity to either get on Moxtra and say, hey, what can we do?
well, I already told you
Physically?
what you can do.
and get a game plan together, or
Yeah.
say, all right, I'm going to go to Victory Church website and I'm going to
Yeah.
give, and I'm going to put a tab over there,
That's excellent.
foster care giving, or something like that, to where it's active. Because
Yeah.
what can happen after tonight, what always happens in things like this, is there's an initial burden, and then it wanes.
The physical.
Right.
And all right, I move on with my life and forget it. That's what happens. That's the reality. And
But
so,
I want to make
ahead.
sure that we understand this. In Victory, right here at our church, I don't know how many families we have with fosters. Several families with foster children, and one family, and I'm going to say, well, I won't say numbers, but there are several families with foster children. So it's not. We're reminded every Sunday
Yes.
that what we do matters.
Right.
and
and,
one of our questions right here, Nathan Sanders brought it up. He said, what are some ways we can help build an environment where the child feels welcome and safe, whether we're fostering or just a friendly church member? Because so often the reality
Yeah.
is fostering parents
Well,
can
that's a
feel
good
very
question.
lonely. They get into this, their hectic lives. They're already doing what they've been doing, plus they've taken on a new burden.
Right.
What can we do as church members, and just as just a friendly face, what can we do to encourage, to help, and to go out of our way.
I think one of the huge things is going back to what we talked about earlier, get involved. And maybe that's not providing respite care, maybe that's not providing babysitting, but when you know they get a new kid placed in their house, what is it that we can do to help you right now? How can we help you?
Yeah,
Give them a
bless them
meal,
with a gift card.
something like that. Or do these kids need anything? Sometimes they come into care with the clothes they have on, and that's it. So maybe you can go shopping for them, go buy them, new shoes, new clothes, new hair products. Sometimes, like, we don't have the time to figure out what size clothes does this kid wear, so we can gather up. Because Hope Rising definitely has a boutique, but if this is an emergency placement, we don't have time
And
to
so
go
what
get
we would
that
do
stuff.
would be offset the financial burden, or
Right.
and in some ways it would be the time burden if we went and just took them a meal.
Right.
That would
Yeah,
even be a help.
absolutely.
But the financial burden is really initially, I'm assuming it's heavy, because all you're doing is reimbursing their basic care, not
Right.
I mean, they're not making a killing off this.
No.
So yeah, that's something that we could definitely do.
All right, this has been a great discussion.
Yeah.
Is there
hard to
anything
believe
that
it's
we
over.
missed
I
tonight that
didn't
you
realize
feel
it was
like
over.
needs to be said before the night is over? Because we only have just a few minutes left. How would you wrap this up?
I think I would wrap it up by, saying get involved in some way. Even if you know one of the foster parents here, maybe you're not contacting me, maybe you're not contacting another agency, but find one of the foster parents in your church and say, I want to be your contact. I want to get my number in your phone. I want to know every time you get a new placement. I want to know when you need food, when you need me to go grocery shopping for you. If you want to become a respite care provider or a babysitter, you have to contact me. I'm sorry. We will have to. We're gonna have to talk.
You're the gate.
But yeah, if you don't want to do that, become a contact for one of these foster parents, and just let them know that, hey, I'm here. Whenever you need me, I'm here, and I want to be there, and I want to do whatever it is you need in that moment to make your life just a little bit easier. Because taking care of children from hard places it's hard.
And another thing that I think is very, very important that everybody in the church can do is be patient with the children and with the parents.
Right.
Or the foster parents.
Right.
I think that's one of the things that I know that there are people that would just wants to straighten everybody out and have them line up like little army soldiers,
Right.
And that's not possible. Not with the baggage they're carrying.
Right. Yeah.
So I think all of us can just be more compassionate is really the right word.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, if you want to learn more about it, there are trainings out there. You don't, necessarily have to come to Hope Rising if, you don't want to. We do provide trainings for that.
There's
We
your
can
plug,
definitely
Hope
put you through it. I love doing the trainings. But there are you can get trained. Just, you can go in and say, I don't necessarily want to be a foster parent, but I want to learn about foster children. I want to learn about what it is that foster parents do, and we will absolutely give you that training and put you through it and teach you.
Well, I honor you for the work you've done.
Thank you.
Despite, this is the way I feel, but despite your past, you have felt enough compassion and have thought that you could make a difference, and you are. And I honor you for that. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And to conclude this, someone in the comment section, Jimmy Votal, who has a lot of experience with this, because we were
Is he
thinking
that
about
tall,
bald guy,
bald
Mr.
guy?
Clean.
That's what I think. Okay. I got you.
He said, without using the word case manager, another alternative would be simply an angel. Because that's really what they are. So we have been visited by an angel tonight, and we thank you all for watching. We do this every Tuesday night. This is Pastor Talk, where we go from a Christian perspective on some real life issues. So if there are issues, some topics that you'd love for us to discuss, why don't you let us know, maybe in the comment section or message us online, and let us know what you want to hear about. But again, thank you for joining us. It was so good to have Ashley Vargas with us tonight.
It's happy
Hope
to be here.
Rising, yes. So thank you for watching. You have a great night.